I was the one that wrote the first two computer for that platform when we decided to launch.
Damilola Teidi was a software engineer who became a reluctant founder at 24.
I was at the bus stop sharing flyers 4 a.m. to make sure this thing works, to get to the passengers so that they can know about GoMyWay. So I wanted to share that peak periods.
She built something she didn't start, lost it in public, and kept going.
I needed to run one
to
know how to support companies better.
How did you not allow yourself die with it? Most people know Damilola Teidi as that powerhouse from CcHub and now Ventures Platform Fund, architecting the environment in which startup thrive. But before the ecosystem work, you were a software engineer, someone building with logic before building with systems. Damilola Teidi, welcome to WC Podcast.
Thank you, Pai. Thanks for having me.
Something I found fascinating about your journey is what I've also surprisingly learned quite recently. You were building tools. You are a software engineer. My first question to you is, what did you think the startup world back then was like?
At the time, so I became a software engineer in, was this 2011.
Okay.
I'd finished NYSC, and I got a place to do my, I think it was 2012 actually. I don't remember. Need to check but yeah, so it was after NYC, and I got a place in a company called SocketWorks. I don't know if the startup ecosystem in Nigeria, it wasn't obvious to me. Let me put it that way. At the time, it wasn't obvious to me. I was working in a software company, but we were building portals for universities and polytechnic. I remember building a particular portal for exams and different things for a particular polytechnic university. Those were my coding days. So it wasn't obvious to me at the time that there was this startup thing going on, but I was in tech.
Okay.
It was in, I think, 2013 or 2012 that it was whether it was Deal Day or Conga. I think it was Deal Day that first came up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, what is this? What is this? It just felt different. It's like, what kind of application is this? Are we supposed to use it? Like, it was just fascinating that somebody had come up with something that was tech, but like everybody could use it. It wasn't what I was building for particular, use cases.
Okay.
And then after that, I think you had Conga, you had Pack. I now started to become the person in the company that was following, all of the new things that were popping out at the time. So I would say, yes, that was what it was for me back then. It wasn't obvious to me initially, and then it became obvious to me. And I think the first app or website that made that obvious to me was Deal Day.
And then you were asked to lead GoMyWay. 2 questions. For someone whose life was in software, how did that happen? And second question is, what part of your software engineering brain felt the most useless when this happened?
So, because of all that had been happening, like I'd been following the likes of Deal Day and all the startups that were coming up, I actually decided to move from software engineering. Funny thing is, I believe I did my master's in 2013. Hopefully I'll get the year right at some point. But the interesting thing is, a year before I went for my master's, I was going to do a master's in computer engineering. Solid, just follow trajectory. I did computer science in my undergrad. I was going to do computer engineering for my master's. A year after, seeing all of these different websites, Paga was there, Deal Day was there, I was like, hold on, I want to do something different. I want to be involved in whatever this thing is. And that was when I then did strategy and innovation management. So I looked at master's courses around innovation management, entrepreneurship and all, and I landed on that. So just to provide context that I had actually switched at this time. So after master's was when I joined CcHub. I had a list of companies I wanted to join, those companies that inspired me to go and study this new thing for masters, because I had left my computer engineering. So of course, one of them was hire me because I'd already left what I was doing. And so CcHub was the one that I, got the chance to work with. And 6 months into that, the opportunity to then run GoMyWay, came up. So at this point, my brain had sort of shifted from software engineering. I'd already done a year of, innovation management, entrepreneurship. But I don't think like logic and flow like software engineering teaches you has, left me in any way. But what was I thinking about when, they brought the idea of GoMyWay? I didn't want to run it. Yeah, I remember I was like, I just started here in like one of my dream places to work. I literally switched my career from software engineering to innovation management. At least I want to be able to do more at CcHub. Now, the thing is, I didn't come up with the idea of GoMyWay myself. A group of people had done that. So they were asking me to run it as CEO, that I leave where I had just started as CcHub business analyst for 6 months, working with the startups, really doing what I wanted to do. And they had said, oh, we want you to run this because of some context, but, we think you'd be able to run it with someone else. And I didn't want to do it. I actually did not. And then I remember speaking to my direct boss then, Tunji Elesho, who was really nice. And, I was like, what do I know? I'm scared. Like, what do you mean I should come and run this platform? Like, somebody even reminded me that, Dami, you were actually 24. No? Yeah, I was 24 at the time. It was 2015, July, I was going to start running it. And my birthday is November 2nd. So I was 24 at the time. I was like, Tunji, what am I supposed to be doing? I'm just a business analyst. But he said to me, and this is the only reason I actually took it, was like, if you really love supporting startups and you're going to, and this is where you want to end up eventually, because that's what I'm hearing from you, then at least try and run one. Under all of these conditions. I'd run one in the past. I'd run a platform called Style Junkie in the fashion industry. So it wasn't my first rodeo, but this one, the stakes were higher. You had people who had brought in money. CcHub was putting money. There was people that had put in so much energy into building this. I was like, I'm scared. And he was like, you don't have to be scared. At the very least, run it, see what it actually is to run a business. If you're going to support people, you might as well know what it actually means to run one. And I say, you know what? That actually makes sense. Like, honestly, that was the only thing. It's like, that actually makes sense. And I said, okay. And then he added a caveat. He said, if I don't like it in 6 months, I can come back and work at it. So that was my out. Like, if I didn't like it in 6 months, my position is still there. It's not going anywhere. They'll keep it for me. I can decide when. Those were the two reasons I decided to jump in. And then
interesting. So it seemed like you had the supports that you needed.
I think I had the guidance that I needed at the time to take the jump. And I felt like I had the cushion. I could come back. It was the unknown, but that message and that, conversation with Tunji helped me take the step that I wanted.
So you didn't start GoMyWay as an obsession like many founders would with, wanting to start a business, wanting to run a company. You actually lead it. And I'm thinking, was there a way it sort of shaped your sense of understanding responsibility and ownership?
So now I'm trying to think about it versus, the time I ran something by myself when I said the Style Junkie. I believe, running GoMyWay was one of the things that taught me that I like to see things to the end. It's both a blessing and a curse. Because I didn't go back after 6 months. Okay. Even though, running that business for the first 6 months was one of the most challenging things I'd done, I didn't run back after 6 months. So it was one of the things that I realized that, okay, Dami, you actually like to see things to the end. Okay. Noted. So I feel like I have a natural responsibility to want to make something work. But I would not put that over the natural responsibility and urge that comes with actually conceiving and thinking of that idea and it being your baby. This felt like my baby, like I'd adopted the baby. And yes, I felt that responsibility towards it. But I don't think it's going to be the same as, me.
A natural conceiving.
Yes, exactly. It's not going to be, it won't be the same, it won't be the same as as that, but I did feel a responsibility to it. I would say that before, and the reason I was asked to join this is because at CcHub, one of the companies I was working with, it's called Jekalo. It was a similar platform as this. So I had been working with the founder to think, go through that idea, testing the platform. I was the one that wrote the first tweet on Twitter for that platform when we decided to launch. So I actually wasn't new to GoMyWay completely. I mean, it was, yes, a few months, but I had been working on something similar, which was why they felt I was the best fit to run it as CEO. And the conversation at the time, I mean, this is now how many years ago, so it's free to share. The conversation at the time was that the Jekalo CEO, who was very technical and great as well, would join in as CTO. Okay. But that never materialized. Both companies never merged. He did not, he didn't agree with some of the terms, so he went in his separate way. So I ended up being the CEO running it. So just to say that I did have some inkling around it. I did feel responsible towards it, like it was my adopted child, but I will never say that it's the same as if I tinker through it, if it bothered me in my sleep and all that. Yes. No.
Interesting. And we did also see you then move from running GoMyWay to then going back to, or going into then supporting a lot of startups with their own, development. But this was sadly before GoMyWay's demise. Well, one thing that I'm curious about is how or what exactly, how did you not allow yourself die with it with GoMyWay's demise?
So I went back to, CcHub. I mean, I went to Paystack, then CcHub after GoMyWay shut down. So I saw GoMyWay to the end, which is why I said I realized that's what I like to do. Someone asked me actually 2 days ago that did I cry when GoMyWay shut down? I say yes now. So now obvious, I cried. I cried. I called my mother. I spoke to quite a number of people. It wasn't the easiest thing to do to shut down the company because, the time between when I realized this company might actually need to shut down and when it shut down was very short. It wasn't, I thought that with the owners of the company, we were going to fundraise and raise more money. Based on the initial, things that had been said. But startups, the world changes. And I had realized late, or we had all realized late, that there's not going to be another fundraise. This is actually...
There was a fundraise.
No, there's not going to be a fundraise at all. Okay. The initial money came from the owners of the company, who were the major shareholders of the company. So I thought that, again, I was only 24. 24 is not that old, it's not that young, but at the time it was quite young to be. I hadn't raised money before, so I didn't have that experience. And I thought, okay, I could do it. I just need some guidance and know what to do. I remember this is early days startup. What were we raising at the time? People were raising very small money. It was just, getting to that point where people were starting to raise a lot of money. So the time between knowing it was going to shut down and when it was going to shut down was very short. So I guess I wasn't exactly that prepared. I tried to push. It was around this time that I had found another way for us to make money. We had made some money. I was trying to show that, we can actually make money from this. Just give us some more time, give us some more runway. Let's do something. We could put this together, but everyone has their different reasons. And I would never know the different reasons as to why people didn't want to commit, more time or more financial resources to it. We had shut down. And the second reason, it was sad to me is because I thought I had been the face of this brand. I had spoken everywhere, CNN, radio, I was pushing. 2 days ago when they were asking me about it, I said, guys, I was at the bus stop sharing flyers, 4 a.m. to make sure this thing works, to get to the passengers so that they can know about GoMyWay. So I wanted to share it at peak periods. I would wake up and go to, radio stations that are far, around 5, 6, just to get that traffic period where people are listening. So I did a lot of things. I was the face. Nobody knows all this backstory that you were hired to run it though, or you were not hired, you know. So I just thought that everybody was going to see me as a failure. And I was never going to get anything, anything tangible after that. So I had the thought that maybe I shouldn't announce the closing of the company. And I should just, just quietly it's not be functioning. At some point, nobody will be sharing rights. It will just fizzle out. But what we were doing was quite a very sensitive platform. And so I didn't want to leave the users who I had come to know just at the mercy of anybody that then gets hold of the platform and does something bad with it. So I was like, see, the only responsible thing to do is to announce it. So be it if I don't get any job after that. I'm going to stay with my daddy. And something might come up eventually. And yeah, but luckily for me, I made the announcement. Let's say I made the announcement on Tuesday. I had my first interview on Wednesday. So, I wasn't...
interview for a new
job. So the person that called me said, oh, Dami, I just saw the story. I'm sorry, but do you want to... I hope this does not sound insensitive, but please, can you come? Let's do interview tomorrow. We need somebody like you. I was like, okay. I was just shocked. And then later I realized, I don't know if it was after speaking to someone, that I do have, I haven't run this thing for 2 years. I do have some experience that somebody else might need. So that was super helpful. But yeah, by the time I was shutting down, I was sad because I hadn't sort of mourned it for long. And then 2, I thought that I was going to be seen as a failure. And people did write a lot of things about what silly things they thought I did or they thought I didn't do. A lot of it was incorrect. Actually, not a lot of it. Almost everything was incorrect as to the different theories as to why I failed. There was nothing that anyone wrote that was actually correct. And that's why, like today, when startups shut down and people are writing think pieces, I'm just like, unless the founder spoke to you or some insider spoke to you, you don't know anything about why.
Did those news get to you?
It did. Oh, at the time it did. And that's why I don't write think pieces when things shut down or when startups fail. Because I know that all of those things that got to me at the time got to me because they were lies. And I couldn't quench anyone. In fact, and I don't know if I've mentioned this, but the night before, I had a long interview with Osarome, who used to write, I think it was Tekabal at the time. Osarome is a dear friend. And so he called me and he was like, Dami, you should share your story. What happened? And I told him everything, But by the next morning, I'd woken up to like strings of messages about what I did, what I did not do. Some people even say, no, I remember when she started it. I'm like, you remembered what? I did not start. I remember when she was building it. I'm like, clearly you must be lying, because I came almost after the platform had been built, nearly like 80 or something percent. I was like, clearly. So it was just so much. I was overwhelmed. I called Osarame very early that morning. I said, please, you can't publish it. I'm done. I'm not saying any reason why it shut down. Because if you put that out, people are just going to tear it again, and they would now take my words and start turning it around. The one that they're already doing now, let it just continue and give them 1 month to end. So definitely got to me. I think what saved me at the time, or why they sort of diverted their attention at some point, is someone who knew the story. And his name has just escaped me now. Anedi, actually. Knew the story, put up his own story on that Facebook group and saying that people said let's even say she wasted this amount of money, because nobody knew how much. We never announced that we raised. So people were coming up with ideas of how much we had. It's like, me that they gave me. So he gave himself as an example that is it not us that were running this company with nearly $1 million that we still had to shut down? Did people even know why we shut down? So people now say, $1 million is bigger than whatever they were talking about. So it's like, oh wow, is that what happened? So they diverted the attention to him. And I remember texting him then on Facebook. I was like, oh, thank you so much, because like nobody's talking about me. I said, don't worry, I got you. And I was like, thank you. So I never forget Anedi for that. So yeah, it did hurt me then. It was someone that came in who actually knew the story that just diverted people's attention. He didn't need to talk about even what he knew. That's another thing I realized. People that know about what happened really hardly say it. It's those that actually don't know that want to now write a long thread or a long message on LinkedIn or Facebook about what they think happened. Whereas the 2 or 3 people besides my teammates that actually knew what went down didn't say anything. One of them just helped divert that attention.
So thanks for sharing that. It's actually okay that we can have an idea of some of the things that were happening at the time. I do feel some sense of remorse, right? Especially because I was also very active around the time of tech reporting and all of that.
You guys.
So,
I don't remember seeing your name.
Okay.
One of the people that wrote stuff. So good for you.
It's been a long time, so I can barely remember what the archives say. But you did go back to the hub to then continue supporting startups. Was this a clean break, or was it a grief from the build? That's Damilola, who is the builder.
So I actually did, before going back to the hub, I got a job at Paystack in November of 2017.
Was that where you talked about, come, we have an interview for you? Was it that?
Yeah, it was that period. I did a lot of interviews.
Okay.
I didn't do Paystack was OO actually, so OO knew what had happened as well with GoMyWay because he had reached out to me to talk about GoMyWay, and one of the very few people that offered me fresh insights that I'd never heard before. So he knew what I was, sort of the restrictions I was dealing with, or the things that we could do that we're not doing, and he knew I had tried. So he reached out to me and said, I want to introduce you to Shola. I think you'll do great at Paystack. And he did. And I went to see Shola, and then I had the interview. So this was probably I had a string of interviews. And then I remember speaking to a few friends, including Anedi again, just to say, where do you think I should, go? And a couple of them said, I go Paystack. So I did Paystack as the place where I thought I would stay in November. But I think a few weeks or so, or should I then say the minister? Now I'm not sure how to address him now in this context. But yeah, he did then call and say that there's the opening of my former role is there. And honestly, like I'd explained before, this is what I wanted to do. This was a major detour. GoMyWay was a major detour. It was 2 years. 2+ years actually. So immediately he said that role is opened, in my head I was just like, okay, I can backtrack to where I was and continue. And now I have the learnings. It's almost like I'm going back in time, but with the learnings of the future. It's kind of interesting. So it made for a compelling reason to return back to CcHub, even though Paystack, even at the time, was such an enjoyable place to work. Still is, I'm sure. But then it was really great place to work. And so I don't know if it felt like how you put it, whether a clean break or something. But yeah, it was just going back to what I actually always wanted to do. It took me more than 6 months to come back. It was 2+ years, but yeah.
So what changes when someone stops being a founder and then goes back to looking at things from the inside, right? Yeah. And was there any pattern that you actually saw from the inside that you felt, maybe this could have, made things, helped things, or made things, go in a very different direction?
Oh, so many things. And I think I was also lucky to have worked at Paystack, even if it was for 2 months, because I saw, how do I put it? I remember, so I'd done the whole GoMyWay journey. And then I got the opportunity, even if it was for a short time, to work within a company that was bent on taking care of its team in a way that even to me, I thought, this is not too much. I remember asking Shola, I was like, all these things. Then there was lunch, there was things in the fridge, a lot of perks, even at the time. And I remember him saying that he feels like if he takes care of his team, they'll take care of the company, they'll do the work, and we'll win eventually. And this was before, so it was 2017, right? So I had the opportunity to then work in a startup that's where the founder and the team had structure and knew what they were doing. They had their firm-wide stand-up. when they were going to write reports to investors. I think Shola then would try and write it every month or something. So it was a good experience to actually be there, because I had first worked with startups where maybe I'll be chasing for certain things I didn't need to be chasing for, and I was creating like these different initiatives. Then I moved to being a founder, and I started to see that, some of the things that I was doing, supporting startups, seemed like an overkill. I learned a lot around the way, and I'll talk about that. And then I moved to working in a startup that some of the things I thought that were an overkill, they were actually doing because they felt it was structured. So those three things
Give me instances. Give me instances.
Like instances of things that I thought were overkill.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was just some of the, coming up with initiatives, like when I was supporting startups, with like the different things that I would come up with that I would just think is super helpful to companies. Like, obviously this is helpful, let's do it. After we are doing this one, we'll think of doing this one. And on paper, and even when you talk about it, it's good. Okay, let's do something around growth. As that is going on, let's find the expert that can do something around product. And each time you bring your startups together to have those sessions. But then, because I now went in to run GoMyWay, and I was running GoMyWay from the CcHub office. So there was someone else that was now creating all those initiatives that I had to attend. At some point I was like, this is too much. I have to run my business. What is happening here? And then it clicked, and I was like, but Dami, you were the one doing all these things before. Do you now see how a lot this can be? I was like, yeah, this is much. So that was like one instance. The second thing was actually reporting. I had to find a way to make reporting easy for me. And I realized that if someone had asked me to submit my report in a different way after I'd spent time thinking of how it could work for me and my business, it was a pain. Even though I know my duty was to report to the investor, that reporting thing, was a pain at the time. So it made me realize that, yes, as an investor, you want the reports, but you have to do it in a way that is easy for the startup, or that plugs into what the startup is doing. If you think about it only for yourself, and then you start giving all these templates that, they should do it this way. But if that's not how they're doing it internally, you're causing a major friction. You're not helping. You're only trying to solve your own problem. So that was like another thing that I realized, that, this reporting thing is not easy, but I have to do the reports. So I have to sit down and think of how I can do the report where it solves for my investors, but also solves for me. I don't want to do a different report for me and my team to look at every Monday and I'm just a team of 5. And I was a very young startup, so we were not all experts. So it made me realize too that there are some things that you can put on a company that could be a burden, whereas you look at it as, I'm helping, but you're not really helping. It just made me appreciate the, time, just the whole entrepreneurial journey. Like, I remember living there and thinking, found that even if you are selling Pepe, running a business is not easy. Another thing that I realized is, people will tell you so many things. Everybody wants to give you advice. Everybody wants to give you advice. The problem is that they are giving you advice without even looking at the solution first. You will first look at the platform, see how it's working, or get some idea about how it's working. Or when I sit with you, I would expect that you ask, so what have you done? And what are you looking for from this conversation? I remember going to one meeting. I heard that you're the one doing this platform. Have you tried this? I didn't see this. Maybe you've not done this. Everything they had said was on the platform. Everything that they had said that was not on the platform, I thought about, we had tried, it did not work. So I remember leaving that place thinking, people are a bunch of time wasters. You could have started with the humility that you actually don't know my space better than I do, because I've been thinking about this business from the minute I wake up to when I sleep. And in my sleep, I'm thinking about this business. So I don't know what angle you might be looking at that I haven't looked at. So maybe the first thing you can do is ask me what I have done, or at the very least, look at the platform. Just try and browse through it. When you do that, you can at least tell me things that are not already there. So we can both learn something new. So I found that a lot of people that just they were in a position to give advice, and they just wanted to dish out advice. There was no humility in understanding that, hey, you're not like humility, understanding like, oh, I'm not the founder, I'm speaking to the founder. Let me first hear from this person and then I can offer advice. And only very, very, very few people did that and gave me anything that was fresh that I can't even remember. So yeah, that's another thing that, I learned, but tons and tons of things, honestly, that I learned from that journey. Tunji was right. Tunji Lesho. He was very right. I needed to run one to know how to support companies better. It's very
interesting. Good. So you've gone from software to building and then to providing support. And I imagine that all of this requires different set of mindsets. So I'm thinking, when did it particularly click for you that your work was no longer about building companies, but essentially supporting the environment in which companies then thrive?
I can't tell you the exact year or day. Honestly, I can't. I think it just came from reviewing who I was, maybe when I'm thinking about my New Year resolution. I just remember like maybe someone asking me why I liked, this was at the time at CcHub, why I liked doing what I, was doing. And I think I remember saying that I feel like I have good intentions. And I'm very passionate about startups. So I believe that my role in this life is to then make sure that people that are creating things for startups are creating it the right way. Because I've had this experience, I feel like I can share that knowledge with people. So whether that be me as I'm creating these initiatives, but if like at CcHub, then you're working with quite a number of organizations, whether it's like the big tech or the development organization. So they're constantly coming to you to say they want to do a program. How should we structure it? So I just felt like, oh, that was, an interesting position to be able to shape that environment properly so that they don't develop a program that is completely off what I feel like as a former founder and now someone supporting companies that founders will need. So I can't remember the exact time my brain shifted to, okay, you're not building anymore. You're creating this environment. You are supporting or creating an enabling environment for startups to thrive. But I've been on that journey since.
So what part of Damilola the builder had to die so that Damilola the ecosystem supporter can live?
Oh, good question. I think that I am still in some ways a builder. Maybe not a builder as a founder.
Okay.
So if you're talking about what part of Dami the founder had to die so that Dami the supporting enabler, ecosystem enabler can thrive, I would say that Dami the founder was very exhausted by the time Dami the founder was done. Very, very, very exhausted. I cannot, So I think I was done when I made the decision to actually not drag or fight for GoMyWay to still be up. Somebody tried to buy it. People try to find ways to revive it. Even till tomorrow, someone will still ask me, are you going to start GoMyWay again? So I know that 2017, September, October, when I closed it down, Damilola, the founder, had rested because it was a very exhausting journey. And Damilola, the builder, environment builder, enabler, ecosystem enabler, came back to life. And that's who I've been since then.
Interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about, the builder versus capability. Should I use the word conundrum?
Okay.
For the lack of a better word, right? I know you've seen, you see talent before some investors do, especially with the work that you do currently. And I know you also know how these startups operate, within, right? But if I also asked you, what's one whisper that tells you a founder is going to be an elite founder?
Ooh. One whisper that says the founder is, wow. I don't know how to put this into words, Okay, but maybe let me try this way.
Okay.
It is, and elite founder to me doesn't mean that you might have a unicorn.
Okay.
You may not, or you might build a startup that's maybe 2 or 3 die, and then you build one that actually successful by your own right. So elite founder is for me just someone that built something that is successful eventually. And I believe that the founders that I really like are the founders that would just go ahead and execute what needs to be done. And they are also, I'm trying to find the word, but it's teachable that comes to mind, but I don't want that word misconstrued in any way. But they're founders that listen. They would listen, but they understand that they also need the spirit of discernment to choose. And when they do choose, they can explain to you their choice if it's not what you told them to do. So I know of a founder that he will tell you, oh, Dami, oh, I need to reach Lagbaja. I need to reach Lagbaja. Can you get me Lagbaja? I'll say, okay, I'm working on it because I'm the person that is supposed to support. So I'm like, let me think of where I can get Lagbaja. I think if I meet this person. But he's not going to wait for me to get to Lagbaja. He's not sitting down and waiting for me because Dami's investor promised him.
Mm.
In 2 days, when I'm even coming back to say, so I reached Chinedu and he said he will get me Lagbaja. I will say, Dami, don't worry, I've reached Lagbaja. I was like, oh, you already did it. But thank you very much for trying. I've seen a couple of founders like that. I love those kind of founders because they know how to execute. They know that they have the urgency. They know that this is their inbuilt KPI. They are just telling as many people so that let the help spread. But it's not that they are sitting down waiting for you to come back. And then if you don't come back in a week, they're like, oh, they didn't get it done. That's one. The second thing, and I've seen founders that have both of these, characteristics. The second one is that they listen. They will listen to you. They will listen to 2 or 3 people. You make your case. You give them the data points. So when you're talking to founders that you know that they will listen, you always have to come correct to them. Like you have to come with whatever data points that you have or whatever insight that you have and why you have those insights. You share your insights with them. I remember there's a particular founder, we spoke to, wanted to get a particular person in a role. And we had said, oh, speak to this person. That's why we think this person will be good for you. Blah, 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 blah. We spoke. He spoke to other people too, as I know he would normally do. But he had a conversation with the person that we said he should have a conversation with. But when it was done, he came back and said, oh, I did have a conversation with this person, but I'm not going to go with that person. This is why and why. This is what I checked. This is what I said. This is who I spoke to. This is the profile that we're looking for actually. And speaking to all these people have made me realize that this is actually the profile, And by the time it was done, I was like, okay, that actually makes sense. Forget that I told you to speak to who I said you should speak to, but that just makes sense. And so those are like 2 characters or qualities that I actually like in founders. And maybe the third bucket, and to be fair, anybody that has these 2 qualities, I believe, has the third bucket, which is that they take good care of their team.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And like I told you how I went and I asked Shola, with this one, not too much. He said, if I take care of my team, we will win. And they actually did win. So yeah, the last bucket is, I think, founders that take care of their team and do right by.
Okay. Curiously, I'd like to know, was there ever a time your gut was right or wrong about a founder? And what did that teach you about capability?
I don't remember if my gut was right or wrong. What did that teach me about capability? Capability of who?
The founder.
No, I imagine that I can't remember. I think maybe I would just say that there is, I was going to say there are some times where people have like deep expertise in something, and that sometimes blocks their own view or worldview about how their company should be built. So let's say, for example, they're long-term teachers and now they want to build an education app. Right. And the fact that they've been long-term teachers, they've been so deeply rooted in the industry, is supposed to be an advantage. And in many ways it is, but it also, I've seen where it could be a disadvantage, where you just now don't listen. to other people bringing you like different world views based on data. And, you know, like I said, listening and having that spirit of discernment to come back, but you're just like, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. So I think I've seen scenarios where I really thought, okay, yeah, this founder has the experience and has the industry expertise. They've been there for long, so this should be easy breezy for them. But then it ends up not being easy breezy because that same thing that was meant to be their power, superpower, becomes what blocks them.
Can you paint me a real scenario, but you don't have to mention anybody?
I mean, I think it was I see this a lot in healthcare.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it in healthcare, where you have maybe doctors, pharmacists, or just people building out their own solutions, having been in the healthcare space for a long time. And healthcare is highly regulated. So I get it. You know, there's a need to always say, this cannot work, this doesn't work, we have to do this because, and eventually you don't listen to the investors anymore. You think you know all the people that you know because in your industry you speak to so many, whether it's governments, whether it's hospitals and all that. So in this particular scenario, like multiple scenarios, not just one, but particularly that industry, I've seen where that has been a blocker.
So I'm thinking, right? Right now, the Africa Tech is celebrating a lot of things right now.
Of course,
right? And, you know,
well-deserved celebration.
I mean, understandable. But from someone who has seen all of this, right? All of what you've seen, is there anything that we should be worried about? In spite of that, so that whole, I don't want to use the word false celebration. If I were to lay it out loud, right? Well, I'm just curious if there's anything we should be worried about in African tech today, from your own perspective, despite the celebration.
Yeah. You know, just to state very clearly, I'm quite the optimist when it comes to African tech and the startup ecosystem. I'm also someone that wouldn't say like false celebrations, for example. And, you know, a lot of people actually say, oh, we're always talking about the headlines or we're always talking about the fundraise. I mean, I'm like, why shouldn't they talk about the fundraise? I'm sorry. Like, I've been a founder before. If you're a good founder, you know what is important to your business. Doesn't mean you won't announce your fundraise if you need to announce it. Like, let's all be real. And you did work for that fundraise because it takes time. So please go ahead and announce it if you want to announce it. I have no problems with that at all. And when I was in the early days of startups, we were giving $5,000 and $10,000. We're in the world where people are giving $1 million, $500,000. That to me is progress that can be celebrated at any given point in time. But one thing I like about the startup ecosystem is that we challenge ourselves. Like I like what you said about, you know, all celebrations, or we check ourselves. I think maybe it's done everywhere, probably in the world, in all ecosystems. Nobody lives in La La Land, but we check ourselves in the way traditionally Africans do. Like, okay, you finish praising yourself, hey, what next? Next one is coming. So what's the next challenge? So I think we do check ourselves constantly, and I feel like that's important. You know, we always ask ourselves tough questions. Now we've had some there was a time where everybody was like, we won't see unicorns. Where are the unicorns? What are we going to do to get unicorns? Then we started getting unicorns. Now it is, are we going to get more unicorns? Where are the exits? I'm like, I love it for everybody. We need to keep asking the right questions. And I think that we continue to do that. And that's how like an ecosystem grows. So I'm always for the celebrations. I'm always very optimistic because I've seen the ecosystem grow from, you know, people not having a lot of money investing to, you know, lots of investments, even foreign investments coming in. I've seen all of that. I've seen us not have unicorns. I've seen us have unicorns. Like I've seen us not have exits. I've seen us have exits. So I think that progress is still there. And I see us consistently asking the right questions and challenging ourselves. And I think that's also like something that's important and good to have. What are the things I see that we should continue to pay attention to? I think talent, we've always talked about it. But what I'm starting to realize is like senior level talent is a pain to find. And I don't, know Why? It's either a pain to find or expensive to find. And maybe I do know, like I can think of different reasons why. That might be like another train of thoughts, but talent, senior management talent is very key. Things like finance, especially, is such a key role. CFOs, such a key role that is kind of difficult to find. I remember in a conversation with some founders, one founder actually said like he broadens his scope now to global. Like he looks for his talent everywhere in the world because the world is continuously becoming a global village. Someone that is sitting in Brazil who may not have been in Lagos all the time or in Nairobi all the time may still be able to understand what is happening. And if they are smart enough, they will understand more very quickly and I can still work with them. Like he was just saying, he solves his own talent problem now by not just looking at African talent. He has to look, global.
Yeah.
Obviously, that particular founder can afford it. Not everybody can. So like for those that can't afford it, what are they left with? So I think talent is one thing that we need to consistently pay attention to. And of course, I think that, and Adventures Platform, we talked about this last year, which is like exits. And exits in the sense that um, an ecosystem continues to thrive with success. It's just how it works. Like when Paystack and all those things happened, there was so much money in the ecosystem. Everybody wanted the next Paystack. 2020, 2021, the largest people were spending so much money investing. It's just something I've always even said that in an ecosystem, if you want it to grow, you have to support the successes. You have to talk about the successes, right? And so when you don't have successes to talk about continuously, it can be a worry. So when we talk about exits, whether it's big acquisitions or whether it's IPOs or whatever it is, it's also so that, of course, shareholders and stakeholders, can see value. But once that value also circulates, it has a ripple effect. People then start to reinvest in other companies. People are able to raise more funding as funds. Like it does a lot of things. It moves money around in the ecosystem. And I think that's why it's important because it helps with continuity of what we've already started. So I'll say maybe that's the second thing. And, people are doing a lot there. They're setting governance things that needs to be in place. When you support companies, you have to make sure everyone is doing things right by the books, all of the works. But yeah, I would say just off the top of my head as we're having a conversation, talent is on one side, exit is on the second side. People talk about pipeline. I remember last year there were a number of investors that were like, "Oh, I'm not seeing great pipeline. I'm not going to see great pipeline." This year, I'm getting people talking about, "Oh, I'm seeing pipeline. I'm seeing pipeline." For me, I tend like when we were saying last year or 2 years ago, I'm not seeing great pipeline. I'm like, it will come. If it doesn't come from anywhere, it will come from Nigeria. We hustle.
Just so for the audience who are watching, can you break down what you mean by pipeline?
Oh, right. Okay. So like investment, like a pipeline of founders of investments or potential investments that you see. So as an investor, for example, obviously you can't invest in air, you have to invest in founders, but you might see 2,000 companies and you only invest in 3 or 4. But imagine if on one end, you only see 500 companies. That's a big shortage, right? Or you see 2,000, but you could only find one good one. So sometimes quantity and quality of pipeline is a thing. Right. And so there was a time last year, I think, where people were like, "Oh, I'm not seeing a lot of good quality. Like I'm seeing lots of things, but I'm not seeing good quality. I'm seeing repetition, seeing good quality." And I just used to say then that just be patient. Like, let's be patient. People are growing as we are talking. People are getting into adulthood. People are thinking up ideas. I can't speak for a lot of places on the continent, but I'm in a country where I know people wake up every day to think, to hustle. They have the energy. Things will pop up. There's just time for everything. There's a lot going on, right? And so this year, when people start to see pipeline, I'm like, we just need to wait. It's good that we ask the right questions. I always love when we ask the right questions, when we challenge ourselves. Very, very good. I love it. Let's not keep quiet. Let's always challenge. But I'm like I said, I'm the optimist. I'm the one that I feel like I've seen so many things, and I know that the cycle will always continue. We will find the pipeline, it will come, and then you would have it. And sometimes you'd have a dry period, sometimes you have a good period. It happens. It happens with all markets, I think.
So they say nothing is ever static, and this is especially true with the innovation ecosystem, and even more so with the AI rave. And when I think about the role of an ecosystem leader, I'm trying to also look at what happens in the next 5 years. Are we supposed to see some level of change in that space?
Never thought about that, actually, in the way that you've asked that question. But one thing that pops to my mind is my role currently. So I'm an ecosystem builder enabler, but in my role at Ventures Platform, I'm head of platform and networks. And the platform role globally can take different forms. So communication sits on that platform role. Anything that is not co-investing sits on that platform role. The part of the platform role that I focus on is the portfolio support, the portfolio success, the communications, and the ecosystem engagements. And the other bit of it is actually how you use technology to support the companies or to make the firm more efficient. And perhaps that's the evolution of a part of the ecosystem builder role, especially if you are in that role where you are supporting companies. There's also policy, there are some ecosystem builders that deal on the policy side of things, for example. So ecosystem builder takes different shapes. In my section where you are like a startup support or startup enabler, I see like what I do as an evolution of what I used to do before. Systems thinking when it comes to portfolio support, using technology, AI, stitching tools together to make what is happening with the companies visible to the entire firm, making the firm more efficient, and being able to find the tools or things that the firm would use in terms of technology-wise to do that efficiency. Providing support to companies that is scalable and not just one-to-one. So that's why I even said before that I'm still a builder, because every day in my office, I'm always building like something in a way that could help either the portfolio or, the firm from a platform position. But the other part of platform is also like ecosystem engagement. I don't know in many ways how AI, takes over, relationship management in a way, but a very good part of my role is building relationships, sustaining those relationships, keeping them warm for the purpose of what we are doing as a firm, but also for our portfolio companies. And that continues to be important. So, and convening ecosystem together, like when we do the Prosperity Summit or any other events that we gather, when we did the Egypt Nigeria thing early this year at Ventures Platform. Those things are like ecosystem engagement, building those relationships for the purpose of the firm and also for the purpose of the portfolio company, at the same time helping the ecosystem. So I think that the ecosystem builder role that has to do with portfolio support specifically has or continues to evolve to what I do, which is like platform, which we call platform. And for me, it's a very interesting space. I see quite a number of people now moving and owning those platform roles and titles from when I started out at VP like 3 years ago. And, it's very beautiful to see and great to see. For people on the outside, maybe for some people it looks the same, but when you're in it and you're doing it well, it's actually kind of different. It's just a lot of technology thinking, systems thinking, programmatic thinking, which I think that I've been doing, my entire life already.
Interesting. So for the founder who is listening right now and then is a bit concerned about where to start, or is probably thinking, oh, I'm a fraud. What's the one thing that you want them to understand about the world that you're creating support around?
You're not a fraud, first of all. Let's just say that. What do I want to think about the world that I'm creating in terms of support to them? I would say that I think everyone knows that the founder journey is very lonely. Entrepreneurial journey. You might have not that you will not have family, you have family and friends, but it's still like a lonely journey. I still remember it, so I know that it's a lonely journey. But if you are with a firm that has like a core support function, utilize it. And it seems like the obvious thing to do. But because of how complex building a business is, you're sometimes even going to forget that you have support. You're going to be so busy, sometimes you forget that you have support. So the first thing that I would say to you is, one, a reminder that this is a lonely journey. And if you are with a good firm or good investor, or you have a group of investors that provide that support, never forget that you have it. Go for building a team that you can rely on when things get hectic. When you think about building your team, think about individuals that go the long haul. Think about individuals that would have that energy to execute. Because that's the support, part of the support system you need. Because when you don't remember that you have support, your team would already be working. They're already there to support you. But again, like I said, don't forget that if you have a group of investors or you put together a group of advisors, at least, then those people, would be able to support you. You always remember that you have that. I mean, there's so many things that you could say to founders, but just that constant reminder as it concerns startup that you have that support and you need it as well. So utilize it.
Thank you so much, Damilola, for sharing all of this. I can just have one final question, which is, is there anything else you want to add along your journey that is important for someone out there listening?
No, I think I've said so much. I hope that, it offers lessons to some, insights to others, and people can see things differently or make good decisions based on it. That would be great.
Thank you so much, Damilola.